The defining feature of our experience as human beings is our consciousness. The defining feature of our experience as human beings is our consciousness, our very awareness that anything exists is the foundation upon which our entire experience of reality is based. To be human is to experience consciousness. And consciousness, from the model of reality that we use to understand the world from the mystery school perspective, consciousness is not just something that is aware of something else on the outside. Consciousness is actually all that is. The only thing that exists is consciousness. And thus, being human, being sentient in the way where we can become aware of being aware, we can become aware that we possess and perceive consciousness, and then becoming aware that all that we behold, though it appears to be without, it is within, meaning that we are not separate from consciousness. We are consciousness, and also everything is consciousness. We are consciousness, our awareness is consciousness, and everything is consciousness. And this is, of course, the mystery. The mystery is, how has this world, how has this reality come into being? If we are consciousness becoming aware of ourselves and all is consciousness, then we are living in this mirror-like relationship with reality. And of course, that is exactly what mystery schools have taught from the most ancient of times, that all that we behold, though it appears there is this world on the outside that we can perceive with the level of our senses, in truth, everything that can be perceived is all a part of one vast grand thing that is consciousness. And our consciousness is aware of consciousness, which is ourselves. We are becoming aware of ourselves as we arise and awaken and transcend in our level of awareness, in our level of human consciousness. We are becoming more and more aware of ourselves. And that's what mystery school is really all about. It is about this mystery of how can we be living in a reality as consciousness that is nothing but consciousness? How can everything there is be consciousness? And how can we, as individual points of awareness, individual points of perspective on the whole, how can we use this awareness that all that we behold, though it appears to be without, it is within? How can we cultivate and develop and build and mold and shape that awareness to create a more enhanced experience of being human, to meaningfully build and expand, enhance and grow our quality of life? That's the question here. And although this idea of I'm living in a reality field of consciousness and I am consciousness, looking at myself, which is this reality field of consciousness, that can seem on the surface at first glance to be abstract. That's an abstract idea, a little too out there, maybe a little too intangible. But really, it is actually the most practical of ideas. And this is where mystery school becomes a little bit counterintuitive, because how could something that seems so abstract on the surface actually be so practical? Well, the reason why it is so practical is because when you understand that everything is a product of your own consciousness, then why would you go out and try to change the thing if really the cause of that thing is consciousness? Why would you go out and try to arrange the surfaces when the source that is generating the surfaces is within your own being, is your own consciousness. And this is where this seemingly abstract idea of, oh, I'm living in a reality field of consciousness becomes supremely practical, because now we're talking about a different way of engaging with life. We're talking about a different model of reality that enables us to understand and perceive our relationship with that greater, vaster aspect of ourselves that is the reality field of consciousness, and to navigate that relationship from the most practical of places, meaning that if we understand what the first cause is, why would we go and try to shift the fourth, fifth, sixth, 10th, 12th, or 20th cause? When we know what the first cause is, we have the greatest point of leverage over our lives. And we know that that leverage is not on the outside, it is within. This is where it becomes extremely apparent that there is power in these ideas. So much power in these ideas that in times prior to this present moment, the ancients who became aware of these ideas, they locked them away. They put them behind hedges and walls and cultivated them within secret gardens, because they knew that really having this level of leverage and agency over one's reality was really something to be respected, to be treated with a profound level of awe, the awesome power of one's own consciousness, and to really be revered, treated as sacred, and thus put in its proper place. Okay, so the idea, there's this wisdom, these proverbs from the most ancient of eras, this idea of, don't cast pearls before swine. Now, in this case, the idea is the most powerful concept and model of reality is also that which should be treated with the most profound respect and level of sacredness. Okay, so it's in today's era, it's not that we gatekeep it for the select few, but rather we approach it in a way that places it in its proper status. Okay, we respect what it means to have such an awesome power as to be, in our own awareness, an aspect of the creative power that creates everything, that creates the multiverse, the polyverse, that creates everything imaginable. We are innately one with that creative power. And so to come to a place where we are actively cultivating this creative power, we must place it in its proper status and approach it with a level of respect. Respect for one's own self, because we are the mediator of consciousness to itself as being, anyone who can say I am. Okay, if you are sentient enough to say that I am, you are now a mediator of all that is to itself through a point of perspective. And so now you are choosing what to see through the eyes, through the senses. You are choosing what to engage with. You are choosing what this world is. You are being the observer. You are selecting from this field of infinite possibilities, and you are making choices about what you are going to choose to place the supreme power of I am in as a state to be embodied and animated. Neville speaks of each of us as life-giving spirits. Life-giving spirits, meaning that which we become aware of and flow our attention into, we give the gift of life. And with this revelation that we are life-giving spirits, again comes this profound connection to a sense of deep awe of the power, deep respect for what it means to be a conscious, intentional mediator of that power. And also, when we have walked the path in a way where we can reach profound acceptance of all that we are in our manifest forms, there is also a very deep and sacred sense of love. Oneness, wholeness, togetherness with all that is. Again, all that we behold, although it appears to be without, it is within. And therefore, the most powerful state that one can embody is that of love, is that of being whole, being one with all that is consciously. We already are, but to assume that state consciously from a place of love, from the energy of love, that is the supreme state. Now, this isn't something that we're discovering just in the liquid modernity of now. This is actually one of the most ancient ideas, because this idea does not originate in time. This is an idea that originates outside of time. We were one with all that is. We are one with all that is in eternity, and we are descending into an experience of time to have a frame by frame by frame movie-like experience of ourselves for a purpose. Now, what is that purpose? Well, that's part of the mystery. And that's why something like Sunday Mystery School, although on the surface, for those who have not yet awoken to the idea of all that we behold, though it appears to be out without, it is within, it may seem abstract, but to those of us who are in the know, to those of us who have awakened our perception to the level of we understand that there is a mirror-like relationship with reality, Sunday Mystery School, diving into the mysteries, really seeking to cultivate, build, develop, grow the part of ourselves, the part of our awareness that is aware of this dynamic. That really is the most practical of ideas. Again, when you understand what first cause is, why would you go to the 5th or 20th? You would start from that point of the greatest leverage. You would start by assuming a new state. If you wanted to change anything in the world, you would start by assuming a new state. And that's the key idea here of everything. It's the key idea that is the baseline, the foundation of everything that we speak about in this sacred space that is Sunday Mystery School. We're continuing today with Neville Goddard's original Masterclass, which really is a masterclass and also a mystery school. It's a masterclass about the aspect of ourselves that is aware of this mirror-like relationship that we have with the world that appears to be on the outside, but is truthfully generated as a reality field in the field of all possibilities, which is the consciousness itself that we all are. A masterclass about developing that. This is episode 28. We've invested 27 episodes to date, really diving into these profound mystery school teachings by a man who very much embodied that state that is all power and all love. The state which the ancients referred to with a specific name. There's actually a multitude of names, but in the tradition that Neville spoke of, which was primarily that of the scriptures, the Bible, Christian tradition, that state is spoken of as the state of Jesus Christ, the one who is all love and all power, has awoken consciousness to that level of being all love and all power. all power in love. We've reached the part of this Mystery School Masterclass where Neville is now fielding questions from members of his live in-person audience. And of course, us in the liquid modernity of now have access to the transcript of these questions, both of those asked by the students and also Neville's replies. And so we are continuing today with those questions, and we're going to be diving into not only the questions, but also the answers and expanding upon them and updating and modernizing this discussion for the era in which we are living in right now. I want to take this opportunity to remind all of you that are listening right now that we are going to do our own Sunday Mystery School audience question and answer session once we have completed the Neville Goddard Masterclass and all of those question and answers. And you have the opportunity to submit your own questions that will be discussed in a format similar to how we've been doing the Q&A from Neville. The link to submit those questions is in the video description on YouTube. For my members in the Mastermind room, there's a link in the chat. I'm also posting it on my community tab. It's widely available. Find that link. Please submit your questions. Very much looking forward to that. And the form has room for 3 questions. You can submit multiple forms. Ask as many questions as you feel inspired to ask, and we will really bring them to a discussion to illuminate them as much as possible. All right, for now, let's go ahead and continue with Neville Goddard's original Q&A. I'm gonna look back here for a moment just to help us kind of reconnect to this moment. So in the Q&A session, the most recent questions that we covered in the last episode, we talked about several. One was, my husband and I are taking the class together. Should we discuss our desires with each other? And we talked about that. And the bottom line was, if you feel that you are spiritually bold, meaning that you are fully in that state of having accepted without any quibbles that your desires realized, then you can speak about it, because even someone's lack of faith will not shake you. And also, if you're in a place where you're guarding the desire in your heart, then also you can keep it to yourself. Okay, so it's really up to you. Okay. Question 15 was, should my husband and I work on the same project or on separate ones? So this is great for anyone who is with a partner who is also very awake and aware and cultivating these states. Should you work together in consciousness and imagination on projects or separate ones? And again, Neville's answer was, whatever you want. If you want to work on the same ones, work on the same ones. If you want to kind of have different roles of who's responsible for what in terms of, imagining the appropriate state, then you can do that also. And then the question that we ended on last week was, I would think you'd get too much into the sleepy state, and then there would be a lack of feeling. Okay, so you're falling asleep, get into the sleepy state, and then isn't it hard to produce a feeling? And this was actually one of the most illuminating questions of the series so far, because Neville says something here that, from the feedback I received in the Mastermind, really provided a profound illumination into this whole idea of manifesting using feeling. Okay, feeling is the secret, but Neville says, I'm not speaking of emotion. I am not speaking of emotion. I am speaking of acceptance of the fact. Acceptance of the fact. How would I feel if I had fully accepted the fact that my desire is realized? Okay, it's not this huge spike of emotion that Neville is speaking of. He is speaking of a simple, calm knowing and acceptance. There's a feeling when you know something is done. That's what he's speaking of. And so from feedback that I was receiving in the Mastermind session, we extended last week and we went longer after the live stream was done in the Mastermind session talking about this. And some of the feedback that I got was that this was a breakthrough realization for some members of the Mastermind, to understand that it's not this focus on really creating a massive amplitude of emotion, but rather really focusing on a simple acceptance that the desire is fulfilled. And if you think about it, This makes so much sense because peak states are called peak states for a reason. Okay. So, a peak state, okay. So, like you're climbing a mountain and it's a 4 hour hike. Okay. So, 3.5 of those hours is ascending. Okay. And then you're up at the peak for maybe a half an hour. Okay. So, it's like the amount of time ascending versus the amount of time spent in the peak state. Okay. So, to artificially create peak states all the time, like that's not realistic. Really what Neville is saying is, the whole idea is to align with the place where you would be standing in the 3D in your consciousness, were your desire, wish, dream already realized. Okay. So what would that feel like? Well, if you had the facts on the outside, you would simply be in a place of calm acceptance. Yeah, I already signed the offer letter, right? It's done. Okay. Now, you may feel emotion with that, but really, after maybe a very ephemeral spike of emotion, it's going to be this calm state of knowing and accepting that it is done. That's the state that manifests. That's the state of feeling that manifests, a calm acceptance that it is done. So, really getting clear on that. It's thankfulness, it's a knowing. When Neville was climbing the gangplank to the ship. Okay, we told this story last week. He's climbing the gangplank to the ship. The feeling was not this huge spike of joy, I'm leaving Barbados. It was actually a feeling that he described as bittersweet. It was, I'm actually a little bit sad to be leaving my family. I've had such a wonderful time here. And also looking forward with a little bit of anticipation to what comes next because I'm traveling back to the States so that I can teach my mystery school masterclass that 70 years later will be discussed on a YouTube live stream and will therefore live forever. Okay. So a little bit of both, right? A little bit of I have this amazing thing that I get to go do, and also I'm a little sad to be leaving the people behind. Okay. So that's like a very human, anchored, grounded, emotional state. It wasn't this huge amplitude of excitement. It was just well, I'm leaving. And he caught the feeling, he caught the mood of what it would feel like were that ticket secured. And it was secured. And that's exactly the mood that he felt. Okay. So getting really clear on that. And I wanted to talk about it a little bit more just to bring some of those insights surfaced in the mastermind to the wider audience. Okay. So with that, let's continue to the next question. So the next question is question 17. Is love a product of your own consciousness? Is love a product? Is it produced by our own consciousness? Fantastic question. Does love originate on the outside and then we experience it? Or does love come from within? Is it produced by our own consciousness and then we experience it? Okay. This is Neville's answer. He says, all things exist in your consciousness, be they love or hate. All things exist in your consciousness, regardless of what they are. They can be love, they can be hate. They're not outside of you, they exist within. Nothing comes from the outside. That's what Neville says. Nothing comes from without. Everything comes from within. The hills to which you look to for help are those of an inner range. Okay, so if you are looking to the outside and you think help is coming from the outside, really the only help would be coming from the inside, meaning from your own state of consciousness. Neville says, your feelings of love, your feelings of hate, or anything in between, even indifference, they all spring from your own consciousness. There's a lot of talk right now about advanced intelligence, AI, particularly in its generative form. So generative AI, whether it's making images or it's making text or it's making, giving ideas, right? So it's generating. And then we're looking at the outputs. You're putting in the inputs, it's generating, you're looking at the outputs. Okay. So our consciousness is generating. Okay. So we're seeing it outputting. Okay. So then when we look at the outputs, we need to understand we are the generator of that output, even though it appears that it's over there or over there, right? We are the generators. We are the ones that are generating that output. Okay, so everything exists on the inside and is pushed out to the outside for us to then experience in time space. Okay, that's the dimensions of our being. We came to this dimension. We are in a human form to experience this dimension, to really experience ourselves sensorially, meaning to experience our state of being in our senses. Okay? Neville says, you are infinitely greater than you could ever conceive yourself to be. Well, that makes sense, right? If we are consciousness and we are viewing ourselves, we know that consciousness is infinite. So whatever we're conceiving ourselves to be, we know that in truth, what we could be, that potential, is unfathomably more vast than whatever we're currently conceiving. Okay, whatever we're conceiving as being possible or conceiving ourselves to be is just a tiny little part. Or in our Sunday mystery school vernacular, we talk about, we're existing in a reality field of local possibilities that is being grown in a field of reality fields that contains all possibilities. Okay, so we're this one little plant in the field of all possibilities. So we're conceiving ourselves to be this, but there are literally infinite other things that we could conceive ourselves to be. Never in eternity will you reach the ultimate you. Never in eternity will we reach the ultimate version of ourselves. It's quite a concept to attempt to fathom, that never in eternity will we reach the ultimate of all that we are. We are infinitely greater than we could ever conceive ourselves to be. That is how wonderful we are. Love is not a product of you. It's not something that we are producing per se. You are love. It is our very nature. That is what we are in our essence, in our source. We are love. It is not a product. It is an identity. We are love. For that is what God is. God is love. And God's name is I am. I am. The very name you call yourself before you make the claim as to the state you are now in. I'm reminded of the wise scripture which says, "Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord in vain," meaning to use the identity of God in a callous, low-minded way. Rather, the commandment is to use it with intention and awareness, because obviously whatever we plug in after the name of God, I am, we're going to manifest. That's going to be what we're experiencing in that moment when we claim that we are whatever we're saying, I am, fill in the blank. That is really an identity that we are now placing consciousness in. We're going to be conscious of the identity that we are assuming. So the state that we're placing ourselves in, I am whatever state, that is what is going to materialize in a three-dimensional world for us to experience. So we can really know what it is like to be that state, because that's really what life is. It's learning what different states are like in a 3D sense. Okay, so you could call it even a holographic reality. Oh, what would life be like were I fill in the blank? Okay, we create holographic reality to play that out. Okay, until we change the state, and then we play out a new drama. We change the state, we play out a new drama, and the drama is played out in the evidence of the senses. So the state that I am in is going to be reflected back to me. Neville famously says, people in your world come and tell you by their behavior the state that you are in. They are acting out on the screen of space. This is what life would be like when I am in this state. Whatever state I am claiming, I am claiming a state, and whatever that state is now being acted out on the stage that is my world. Men and women, people come and show me my state by their behavior. Circumstances, situations, people, places, events, all animate and orchestrate and conspire to show me evidence that is tangible of the state that my consciousness is sitting in, has claimed is, we talk about living in the many mansions of consciousness. What is my residence? Okay, not where am I staying overnight because I rented it for a night on Airbnb. What is my home mailing address? That is what is going to be animated in the world around me. The state which I have taken up occupancy, it's become my permanent address. If it's the ideal state, it becomes permanent address. So we want our ideal state to be our permanent residence, the address that goes on the driver's license. That is the state when it is the ideal that we desire to see reflected back to us. So when we are living in the ideal state, now the people, places, situations, circumstances, and events, themes that are measured by our senses. So it's what we hear people say, what we see people do, where we go, right? The environments that we find ourselves in, what we taste, what we smell, what we touch. All of that is evidence of our state. Okay, so to change the state is to change the sensory evidence that is correlated with our state of being. Okay, so the evidence of our senses is directly correlated with our state of being. So when we change our state of being, the evidence of our senses change. And one of the ways to change our state of being is to change the evidence of our senses in imagination. Okay, so this is Neville being told, I'm sorry, sir, you have to wait 9 months to get back to the States. And he's like, I can't wait 9 months. I need to go teach my Masterclass. So he goes back to the hotel and he says in his imagination, he says, well, what would I, with my 5 senses, what would be the evidence that I have the ticket and I'm going home? So naturally, he's like, oh, I'd be climbing up a gangplank to the ship with my wife and my daughter, and my brother would be helping us, load our luggage. And so in imagination, going through the process we've talked about extensively here in Sunday Mystery School about really getting into the brainwave state of complete relaxation, dimming the evidence of the senses in the 3D so that you can awaken the evidence of the senses outside of time and connect to them. He lays back in an easy chair. I'm so sleepy. I'm very sleepy. He gets into that very sleepy, drowsy state where he can control his imagination with his attention without completely falling asleep. And in his imagination, he constructs a scene of climbing up the gangplank with his wife and his daughter and his brother. He's rearranging the sensory evidence in his imagination to change the state from being the man who did not have the ticket to being the man who did have the ticket. From being the man who was told, I'm sorry, Mr. Goddard, you have to wait 9 months, to being the man who heard, Mr. Goddard, we have a stateroom for you and your family. We called you ahead of 250 people on the waiting list. We called you. Would you like the tickets? Okay, so he changed the state by changing the sensory evidence. So he went into his awareness, his consciousness, because consciousness is the only reality. So when you make a new memory, by rearranging sensory impressions in your imagination, you are changing consciousness. You are changing your state. And now, all that you behold, which appears to be on the outside, is simply going to show you what you know that you are on the inside with that calm feeling of acceptance. This is all of the ideas coming together holistically. We're weaving all of the concepts that are taught in Sunday Mystery School together in one beautiful whole. When we create a new memory by going into our imagination and rearranging sensory details, sensory evidence, what would we see? What would we taste? What would we touch, smell, hear? If we were in the state of being the one who is and has, and then constructing a scene that includes that sensory evidence, that is what changes the state, because now our state went from the person who never experienced that. We don't have any memory of ever experiencing climbing up the gangplank to the ship exactly on time and looking back at the shore of Barbados and feeling bittersweet. We never had a memory of that until we went and we created it. And then when we come back from having created that memory, by very nature, we've changed consciousness because now we have created that experience. So now we are the one who has the memory of having done this before we go and do it. Okay? So that which I have done, I have done. Okay? I go to prepare a place for you. Going in imagination as the part of yourself that knows that you are all consciousness. And you're preparing a place for yourself by rearranging sensory evidence to create a new memory, knowing that that new memory creates a new state. And if I go and prepare a place, I will receive you. Right? So I will receive the physical correlate of my consciousness, which is my physical body, into the place which I have prepared for myself by going into my imagination and creating a new memory, by rearranging sensory details to construct a scene that would imply that I am the one who has and is what I desire to be. Continuing with question 18. Suppose what I desire cannot materialize for 6 months to a year. Should I wait to imagine them? Suppose I have a desire that, for whatever reason, cannot happen for 6 months to a year, or some indefinite time in the future. Should I wait to imagine those things? I think it's a very practical question. So if I have a desire of something that I want, but maybe not right now, I know that it's in the future for some reason or another, should I wait to imagine them? It's a very practical question. This is Neville's answer. He says, when the desire is upon you, that is the time to accept your wish in its fullness. When the desire is upon you, that is the time to accept your wish in its fullness. Meaning that when you feel hungry, that is the time to eat. Okay? So when you feel a desire for something, that's the time to satiate that desire. And how do we do that? By going into imagination and creating a scene with sensory details that would imply that we are satiated in that desire. Do it when the desire is upon you. Don't wait. Do it when you feel hungry. Feed yourself. When you feel thirsty, drink. Perhaps there are reasons, Neville says, why the urge is given you now, at this time. Your three-dimensional being may think that you need to wait, that it cannot be now, but your fourth-dimensional mind knows it is already so. So the desire should be accepted by you now, as a physical fact, now. Here's an example. Suppose you wanted to build a house. The urge to have the house, well, it's now. You want the house now. But it's going to take time for the trees to grow. And it's going to take time for the carpenter or the contractors to build the house. The urge does seem big, but do not wait to adjust to it. Claim possession now and let it objectify itself in its own mysterious, strange way. Do not say it'll take 6 months or a year. The moment, the very instant that the desire is upon you, that is the time to satiate the desire and assume that it is already a fact. You and you alone have given your desire a time interval, and time is relative when it comes to this world. Do not wait for anything to come to pass. Accept it now, as though it were, and see what happens. When you have a desire, it is the deeper you, the part of you that other people call God. That is the part of you that is speaking when you have a desire. De sire, de meaning of, sire, the Father. So the part of you that is the Father, that other people would call God, the Father, that is the part of you that is speaking when you have a desire. And that part of you is urging you through the language of desire to accept that which is, not that which is to be. Okay, so the part of you that is outside of time doesn't have any concept of tomorrow. There is no tomorrow. There's only ever now. Okay, so the part of you that is outside of time doesn't see that's coming later. The part of you that is outside of time is asking you to accept that this is part of your possibility now. Desire is the communion of this part of yourself that is God with you, the child of God, the one that is here in the 3D, in the materium. Desire is a language spoken between the part of you that is the Father and the part of you that is the child of God, Son of the Most High. And that communion, that desire, that language, that conversation is telling you that the desire is yours now. Meaning it's pointing you to your possibility of what you can be now. So the whole point is to accept this. Don't resist it. Don't push against it. Don't say, oh, I'm going to pretend I don't want that. Accept it now. And the way that you accept it is by adjusting to it in your state as though it were true. That's how you accept the desire. You adjust to it as though it were a fact. So you move your awareness to the place where that is already a thing rather than something that's coming. Okay? It's not I will be, it is I am. The name of God is not I will be. The name of God is I am. Question number 19. Why do some of us die young? Why do some of us die young? Neville's answer to this question is perhaps the most classic answer. He says, our lives are not, in retrospect, measured by years, but by the content of those years. Simple, beautiful, classic answer. Our lives are not measured in years, but rather by the content of those years. So we should not measure the quality of a life by its length, but rather by its actual quality of experience. That should be the measure. So as an example, many people have pointed out that Neville died at a relatively young age. He was 67. I suppose today that's quite young. Many people have said, being on YouTube, I get comments to this effect. If Neville was such a powerful manifester and such a wise mediator of the power that is imagination, then why did he die young? Assuming that 67 is young. Well, here's your answer. He didn't die young. He lived a life of quality. He lived a quality experience, and his time here was done. It was time for him to exit the stage that is this world. And he left right on cue. He didn't miss anything. It was by design. The signature of the architect of consciousness itself is all over his life, from beginning to end. He did not die young. He left right on time. And each of us can say the same. Each of us were born exactly on time, and each of us will depart exactly on time. And how we fill those intervening years with our acceptance, not of what will be, but what is. By claiming the name of I am, not I will be, but I am. That is how we fill those intervening years between our appearance on this plane and our disappearance from this plane in this form with quality. The next question so beautifully follows this question of how to measure the quality of a life by the content of the years rather than by the length of the years. So the next question is, what would you consider to be a full life? I love this question. It's how can I really get the juice that is life? There's so much beauty to be harvested from this human experience. How do I really make the most of it? How do I live life to the fullest? This is Neville's answer. He says, I consider a full life to be a variety of experiences. A variety of experiences. I value variety. The more varied the experiences, the richer your life is. At death, Neville says, you function in a dimensionally larger world. And you play your part on a keyboard that is made up of a lifetime of human experiences. Therefore, the more variety you have experienced, the more varied your experience is, the finer your instrument is, and the richer your life is. Question 21. What about a child who dies at birth? Naturally following this idea of a full life. Well, if a full life is measured by a variety of experiences, what about a child who dies very, very young or even at birth? Here's Neville's answer. He says, the child who is born lives forever. Nothing dies. How could anything die if all that we behold, though it appears to be without, it is within? If everything that we are experiencing is consciousness, how could anything die in consciousness? That state that we speak of that is all love and all power famously says, none have I lost except the belief in loss itself. Because when I am all love and therefore all power, those two ideas are inseparable. When you are all love, you are all power. When I am all love and I am all power, how could I lose anything except a belief that loss is possible? A child who is born lives forever. Nothing dies. It may appear that the child who dies at birth would therefore have no keyboard of human experience. But, as a poet once said, he drew a circle that shut me out. Infidel, scoundrel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle that took him in. He drew a circle that shut me out. I drew a circle that took him in. We always can draw the larger circle. We can always draw that larger circle. That poet that he's quoting, I don't know who the poet is. He doesn't actually call out the name. But this poet is surfacing this idea that no one can ever shut us out of anything because we always can draw the larger circle that encompasses all things, because that's what, in our true identity, I am is all things, cannot be shut out. None have I lost, save the belief in loss itself. That's the only thing we can lose, is a belief that anything can die, is a belief that anything can be lost. That's the only thing that there is to lose, is a belief that loss is possible. The loved one has access to the sensory experiences of the lover, and God is love. Therefore, ultimately, everyone has an instrument, the keyboard of which is the sensory impressions of all men. So the key idea here is that love unites us all. So being even just born once, even dying at birth, that child lives forever as part of the whole that is love. And God is love, and therefore, and everyone is God, and therefore everyone has experience, has the ability to experience the instrument, the keyboard of which is the sensory impressions of all men. So the instrument that is formulated out of the 3D is all of the sensory impressions that could be conjured to experience in the 3D. Okay, we're going to do one more question here. Maybe two questions, because this next one is, the one after this is quite relevant to what's been happening recently. Okay, so question number 22. What is your technique of prayer, Neville? Well, it starts with desire, because you wouldn't pray for something unless you had a desire. You must know and define your objective and know it so clearly. You must distinguish it so definitively. It must be so clearly defined in your mind's eye that you know what would naturally follow it. Okay, so the key here is to understand you must know what you want. You do not have to know how you will get it. That's not your job. Okay, you are the perceiver in a field of consciousness. Okay, the fields of consciousness grows itself. You're the perceiver. So your job is to choose what you want to perceive. Okay, and then choose to perceive it in your imagination. Okay, so you need to know what your desire is. You need to have it clearly defined. You do not need to know how it's going to happen. So that's not the part you need clarity on. You just need clarity on the end. And then you need to condense that clear picture of the end into a sensation, meaning something that you can feel physically, right? That implies that it is done, that is fulfilled. It's how you're building your mansion that you will take occupancy of. It's how you're creating the state, creating your alignment with the state, because all states are already created. Okay, it's important to understand that. You're simply moving into the state by arranging the sensory experiences associated with that state. When your desire is clearly defined, immobilize your physical body and experience in your imagination the action which implies its fulfillment. Repeat this act over and over again until it has the vividness and feeling of reality. Okay, so that's Neville climbing the gangplank. He feels the rails in the hands. He feels himself walking up to the top of the ship. He smells the sea, the salty air. He sees the ship, he sees the shoreline, and he catches that mood of bittersweet. I'm glad that I'm leaving so I can go teach my mystery school that will be eternal and immortal, live in the minds of men for forever. And also, I'm a little sad because I just had such a wonderful time with my family here in Barbados, and I know that I'm leaving. Okay, so it's a little bit of both, and he caught that feeling. Okay, so that's the sensation that implies the feeling of reality, the vividness, implies the fulfillment. You can also condense your desire into a single phrase, such as, "Thank you, Father. Isn't it wonderful? It is finished." Again, the feeling is not a big spike of emotion. It's rather a calm sense of acceptance that it is done. Repeat that condensed phrase or action in your imagination over and over again. Then you can either awaken from that state or you can slip off into sleep. It does not matter, for the act is done. And when you completely accept it as being finished, in that sleepy, drowsy state, that is when it is done. Okay, so we have, in our human experience of reality, there are two portals in time that we experience naturally in our sleep-wake cycle, because every human being that I'm aware of on planet Earth sleeps, wakes, sleeps. Okay, so usually you're falling asleep at some point within a 24-hour cycle, and you're waking at some point within a 24-hour cycle. And whenever those two moments are for you, you pass through the portal from your waking state of consciousness to your sleeping state of consciousness. You move through the portal, that little window, which is access to the programmer's console of reality itself. And when you get access to that programmer's console of reality, what you do is you arrange the sensory impressions to imply that what you would like to see in the output of your reality has already happened. That's what you do in that little portal of time, either on your way into sleep, which is the hypnagogic state. That's what scientists call it. It's actually a specific brainwave state that gives you access to the field of reality. We've talked about this at length in previous episodes. And then again, upon waking, when your brain is not fully woken up yet, you pass through what scientists call the hypnopompic state, which is, again, that little portal where you have access to the programmer's console, and you can go in there and reprogram and arrange sensory impressions to imply that what you would like to see projected onto the screen of space has already happened. Okay, so that's every single person, every single point of conscious awareness that is having a human experience on planet Earth experiences the portal state twice per day. It's built into everyone's reality. And those of us who are aware of it consciously can create it on demand, which is simply what Neville is saying here. Immobilize the physical body, get into a drowsy state of consciousness where your attention can be controlled, but you're not paying attention to what has already manifested, but rather you're going into the deep of your own awareness, which is multidimensional and outside of time. And then you're rearranging sensory impressions. Okay, so we've talked about this extensively. This is what you do. You can create access to that programmer's console on demand when you are aware of these secrets, these mysteries. And this is your agency as a creator to be able to choose what you desire to experience. Okay? All right. With that, we're going to go ahead and pause there. So with that, we're going to go ahead and go back to the Zoom room, the mastermind. We're going to field any questions or comments or contributions from the mastermind about what we've talked about so far. So let me go ahead and adjust the settings here so we can hear from the members of the mastermind. Okay, back to the Zoom room. Anybody in the Zoom room have anything they would like to contribute or share, or any questions about what we've talked about so far? Hello, everyone. Or Lena, hi.
Hi. So again, great class. I just I actually don't have any questions.
Okay, yeah.
I always have questions, but I just wanted to say, this has been amazing. And with everything with everything that's going on right now, as far as, the United States, um, do we, so the opposition, right? Okay, this is with the election. So we have to put love into it. Like, we have to, because it's a part of us, right? Okay. That's what I heard with one of the questions, or with what you were saying, is that it's all of us. It's so, even though it's per, not what we want, or not what I wanted, it's me. And that's the acceptance part. Am I getting it? Am I
So you're
like,
there. I would like to offer a distinction. Okay.
okay, okay,
So most of us have a vision for a future that transcends individual characters on the stage,
okay,
right? So you say, even though it's not what I wanted, okay, so maybe it's not what your local self, when looking at what appeared to be two options, okay, maybe
yeah,
you were like, oh, I kind of would like this other option, but you have desires that are far, far greater than, characters playing parts on the stage, right?
right,
So
right,
okay, so this is the example that I would like to share. So
okay,
Neville tells the story of wanting to give the gift of opera tickets to his brother who had come from Barbados to visit him in New York. And
okay,
the opera was sold out. Okay. But he was like, I'm getting these tickets. So he in his imagination, he's holding them in his hand, right? Holding the tickets in his hand. And in that moment, he's in line to get to the window to buy the opera tickets. And he witnesses a man in front of him steal money
okay,
from the teller. Okay. A criminal act right in front of him. Okay.
okay,
And by calling it out and making sure that the man was caught and
mm-hmm.
everything was made right, because he did that, the teller at the window was only too happy to give him the reserve VIP tickets that they
Right,
keep on the back shelf just in case someone super important needs opera tickets, right?
right,
So Neville manifested the opera tickets, and this
okay,
man came and played the part of being the criminal in
right,
order for that to happen. So that was the part he didn't know. I don't know how. I just know I need opera tickets. Okay. So what I'm
right,
inviting each of us to do in this moment is to transcend the little individual dramas of the characters and what they're doing.
yeah,
Instead, consider that they have to do what they do in order for us to experience our larger desires.
right,
So
right,
in this case, you can say, maybe it's not what I thought I wanted in the moment, but it has to be for my highest good, because all
exactly,
things work together for the good of those who love God,
okay,
right?
okay,
Love, that's the
yeah,
love part, the good of
yeah,
those who love God. So I love God, and that is far more important than
right,
any of the individual dramas or scenes being acted out in the screen of space, right? So
right,
I
right,
can trust that the silence and the darkness knew, and that what I have planted in that
mm-hmm,
fertile soil, even if the names showed up differently than what I was hoping in the moment, I
right,
can trust that it is the right outcome to manifest my highest desires, my
right,
greatest potential. Okay.
okay,
And
okay,
and I
oh,
I
oh,
my
great,
intention was to present that in a way that transcends any of the minutia of the noise and the dialogue and the arguments and all.
yes,
Like, no, let's go to the source and let's understand that it is conspiring for our highest good. So
mm-hmm.
so as I'm going to give another example. So they talk about Neville talks about as an example. He's like, go with the ideal. It's like, what is my perfect partner? What is my perfect job? Like, what is my best right? Rather than associating it with a specific identity or like, I really want to work here or I really want to date this person. It's this idea
Mhm.
of like, okay, how about I go with what's best? Like what is best for me? What is
Mhm.
best for my highest potential, right?
Mhm.
So when you connect to that, it transcends all of the noise.
Yeah.
And for me, it's given me a profound peace. No matter what seems to be happening in the screen, on the drama,
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
have connected to this profound sense of peace of I know it is conspiring for my
Right.
highest good because that's what I
Right.
have claimed for my experience.
Exactly. Okay. All right. Thank
Thank
you.
you for that beautiful question, Orlena, and the contribution, the discussion.
Thank
Perfect. Thank
you.
you. Shireen.
Okay. Um, Thank you for that lesson. That, there are times I used to go to church and be like, wow, was this whole sermon just for me? Because it just spoke to me perfectly.
Beautiful.
And I wanted to talk on, there was a part in the answer where Neville was basically, he was denied his ride home. And you mentioned, he went back to the hotel room and he immediately started to bring about the feelings of the wish fulfilled.
Yes.
And that really spoke to me today because right now in particular, um, outside of the larger screen of the world, in my own personal reality, there are evidences of, you know, not necessarily how I would want this to be fulfilled, but remaining faithful in those moments has got to be such a key. I've been
Mhm.
recalling, um, I think it was in Brazen Impudence, you brought up Abdullah over and over again. Neville, you are in Barbados, closing the door. Neville, you went first class,
Mhm.
closing the door. Like staying so persistent in that. And I just really love that part of the sermon today and just speaking to there's going to be external evidences to the contrary.
Mhm.
It is your job to remain in the wish fulfilled. And
Yes.
that takes such bravery,
Yes.
mental focus, discipline.
Yes.
And it almost makes me think, you know what, if the path was supposed to be easy, just think of it, here it is, and think of it, and here it is, how bored would we get? So um thank you for that part of the lesson. It really spoke to me today. It really reminds me too, you know what, I went first class,
Mm.
and that's that.
Yes.
So
Yes. Shireen, I love that. Thank you for that contribution. I want to also surface something you said there that's really landing with me right now, and it's this idea of remaining faithful to the vision. There's this um you talk about the like a bravery. So I did some etymology a couple years ago on Neville's name. Most of you probably heard this, but I just wanted so present to it in this moment. So I want to say it again in case some of you maybe haven't. So the last name, Goddard, if you go back and you look at the etymology of it, it basically translates to brave God. Brave God, Goddard. And if you look at the name Neville, and you look at the etymology of Neville, it basically translates to bag of skin. It's kind of a weird way to say it, but it's like brave God in a human body. Neville Goddard. It's like that literally like refines it and distills it to the core essence of his message. Be that brave God in a human body. And I love that so much. And it does take bravery to remain faithful. Just as you're saying, and you said mental discipline, like all of that comes down to being the brave God in a human body. I just think that's so beautiful. So thank you for surfacing that for us.
yeah, thank you for bringing up the naming. I actually looked into my name last week after you mentioned it, and apparently my name means fertile land.
Hey,
So,
that's beautiful.
you know,
The fertile soil of your imagination.
whatever I plant will grow. So that's what helped me
Yes.
come up with my icon, because I guess whatever I plant in my heart, I will see. So thank you again. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Shereen. Anyone else in the Zoom room? Wow, we're full house today. This is beautiful. Anyone else have anything they'd like to contribute? Okay, if you are on the YouTube live stream and you are not in the mastermind session on Zoom, this is your invitation to join the mastermind session, because we're going to be doing an actual mastermind here in a moment. For all of you that are on YouTube, thank you for joining us live. We will continue this conversation next week. There's still more questions coming. It just keeps, what I love about this question and answer session is how it really completes the picture. It takes all of the concepts that we've talked about for the last many, many months of weekly live streams and begins to weave them together in this way that really helps us find that incredible clarity and also that the practicality. Like, it's, these ideas, they're not abstract, they're actually profoundly practical when you understand them. And I feel like that's the part that we've reached with this Q&A of like really understanding how practical they really can be. So it's such a beautiful part of this mystery school process that we're in here. And I appreciate all of you for joining us and contributing your energy. Those of you that are on the live stream, those of you that are watching the replays, we feel your energy. Thank you for being with us. We look forward to continuing this conversation next week. And until next time, my friends, as always, imagine wisely, and we will see you all in the next.